I'm Barry Trammell.
And I'm Jenni Carlson. Welcome to the Jenni and Berry Show.
OSU moved into a four-way tie for second place in the Big 12 football standings Saturday with a 48-34 victory over West Virginia. And yes, that is relevant information. It seems crazy, but the Cowboys' remarkable turnaround from a horrid September has OSU thinking Arlington and the Big 12 championship game. We'll talk about the trip to Morgantown, OSU's homecoming game Saturday against Cincinnati, and all things Cowboy football. But first, we want to thank our sponsors for supporting the Jenni and Berry Show.
MidFirst Bank, Laser Light Skin Clinic, the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, the Oklahoma Ford Dealers Association. Drive into your best in Oklahoma Ford dealers today for the best deals on Ford's full lineup of trucks and SUVs. Ford is the best in Oklahoma.
All right, Jacko, how was your weekend? Mine was spectacular. You have seen West Virginia in early to mid-October. I have not. I'd only been there in June, September, and November. No thanks, Big 12 football schedulers for the last decade. But I got to go in the peak of the fall foliage. It was gorgeous. The view from Milan-Pusker Stadium's press box is one of the best in college football. So I just thought it was unbelievable. It's like watching a football game in an art museum. I was very inspired. So I wanted to ask you, what are some of the best settings you've been to for college football, and just in terms of the stadium setting?
Yeah. By the way, I had a hot Saturday. That's how my weekend was, and I think Sooner fans would agree. It was one of the hotter games, especially after we had such cool temperatures. I wish we would have had something that felt a little bit more like fall on Saturday, but I got to tell you,
91 at kickoff.
It was. I don't know if it was at kickoff quite that hot, but it got into the low 90s. So it was definitely stay hydrated, wear your sunscreen, all that jazz. So, but I would say for me, among the ones that have been most visually pleasing, obviously Colorado's stadium there in the foothills of the Rockies. Beautiful, beautiful setting. The Rose Bowl. Oh, love the Rose Bowl setting. That's beautiful. But I think about some of the places you've been, Barry. Washington, Tennessee. I mean, do you still think West Virginia might be over some of those?
Well, Washington's hard to beat. Looking out on Lake Washington, that's fantastic. Although, now I've not been to the Seahawks Stadium. You have. What kind of view is that? Because it's right there on the Sound. What kind of view do you have when you covered that Oklahoma State-Washington State game in Seattle? What is that? What does that one look like?
I actually didn't cover that game, but I've
You
been
didn't go
near.
Up there?
I don't. Yeah, I know. I'm thinking, why didn't I? Because you didn't. So who did? Well,
I don't know.
There's a hole in the force, Barry. What has happened? No, you're right. You're right. I'm thinking of that game too, and I'm not sure. Well, we'll do some investigating. We'll come back with an answer on that. But it is beautiful. I've been near that stadium enough times to know it is pretty right outside. Now, I don't know how the views are from inside that stadium. That's the thing about some of these stadiums that when you step out, it's amazing. But when you're in, you don't get quite the view. So it's an interesting question you ask, because but even somewhere like Kansas, which I'll be at Kansas this weekend, it's set down sort of in the valley of the campus, and especially with that fall foliage, I don't know if it's going to be as nice as Morgantown was, but I think it'll be nice on Saturday in Lawrence.
KU is nice. Cincinnati's got a cool setting because of the urban look. It's like the Pittsburgh Pirates, PNC Park, looking out over the Pittsburgh skyline. Cincinnati's got the urban feel too. Of course, the game's not in Cincinnati Saturday, Jacko. It's the game's in Stillwater, and Cowboys should get a victory. But before we go to the Bearcats, let's talk some West Virginia. Game was tight. Game was anybody's game. Go to the fourth quarter. West Virginia has a lead. And then it was Ollie oxen free. Ollie Gordon, 149 yards rushing in the fourth quarter. Cowboys break away, win it 48-34.
I could have sworn this was a team that couldn't run the ball, Barry. Where did that team go?
This was literally 4 weeks ago. We're talking about that. Offensive line stinks. Can't run the ball. Need new coaches. All those things. Now, the one thing that we said and fans said, the media and the fans are not always idiots. Sometimes we stumble upon them. One of the things people said was, give the ball to Ollie Gordon. Turns out it was a good idea.
Very good idea. Hey, he's had 2 huge games now, Barry. We saw the week earlier, not the rushing total, not the over 200, but over 100 in both rushing and receiving. Had all sorts of big plays in that game. And then, obviously, like you say, just a monster rushing game against West Virginia, running away from guys in the fourth quarter. I mean, kicking it into another gear and taking off. I mean, we talked last week about Ollie Gordon, Barry. I think we're going to be talking about him for the foreseeable future because this guy, we said last week, is this a star in the making? Now, he might be the best running back in the country. Is that too crazy to think?
Well, I was thinking the same thing. There's no criticism of your thought process. Same thing was in mine. I thought, he's going to get on some Heisman lists. He's going to make All-American. This is going to be great. And then I looked. He's up to 4th in the nation among Power 5 tailbacks in rushing. So that's pretty good after the start. Here's his problem. The 3 ahead of him, all from the Big 12.
Oh, brother.
Brooks at Texas, Brooks at Tech, and the kid at TCU, Bailey, I think his name is. So Ollie Gordon's going to have to huff and puff just to make all Big 12. So now, if he keeps going for 282, Big 12's going to be left in his dust. But this is a little bit of a renaissance season for Big 12 tailbacks. So, he's getting the notoriety. He was fantastic. He got stronger. Everybody was getting tired, and Ollie Gordon wasn't. He was just running across the field for touchdowns. His last 2 carries was 63 and 46 or 53 and 48. His last 2 carries of the game, he goes half the field for touchdowns. I'm not sure I've ever seen that before. So, a star was born a week ago. We talked about it. The star shines brighter even now. So
it feels like he might be elevating into some sort of superstar status because when you start rushing for that kind of yardage, people take notice regardless of where you are, who you're playing. Obviously we'll talk about Cincinnati in a minute, but there's really no reason to see this freight train slowing down. He has gotten, like you said, better as the games go on, seemingly better as the season goes on. Barry, it's almost unfathomable when you think about Ollie Gordon getting 3 carries against South Alabama. Oh my goodness. How did that happen?
Now, I will cut Gundy and his staff a little bit of slack.
No, don't. I don't want to hear any slack.
You're not going to cut him any slack?
No slack. You can. I'm not gonna.
Now, listen, this is a different, of course, I would prefer to live in a no slack world, but that's a different subject. Anyway, listen, if it was anything but South Alabama, I'd be on the bandwagon. OSU was so bad against South Alabama. I don't know if 33 carries would have saved them from Ollie Gordon. But it is strange because we saw it last year, right? We saw a flash. We said, this guy's pretty good. He's a freshman. Yeah. Came on strong at the end. And, hey, and cutting Gundy and staff a little slack a week ago in that Kansas game, Nixon gets in. I think Ollie got fatigued or something, particularly down near the goal line. Something happened. Nixon comes in. I think he finished with 4 carries, 34 yards. He was productive. Yep. He's pretty good. Yeah. Saturday in West Virginia, there was no sharing of carries. It was all Ollie Gordon. So clearly the Cowboys have found their bell cow, and they've found a way for that offensive line to function. The thing I liked about him is they weren't doing a lot of subterfuge. There was not a lot of counters, not a lot of spread options, not a lot of let's dance around. They were running that quick power right up the middle, and he was hitting the hole and then bouncing outside or going. The thing about Ollie Gordon, he's got great vision.
He does.
He can see. Hey, if I dart left right here, there's a crease, and I can go instead of 6 yards, I can go 26 yards. And he told me after the game, he said it's interesting. He said I can figure out most of that before the play starts. He said I can just sort of. He's actually reading defenses. Now, I assume tailbacks for 100 years have been reading defenses.
Of course.
I've never heard anybody say that, though. I've never had a tailback say it. I've never heard a coach refer to it. A guy reading defenses before the snap, the way Peyton Manning is saying Omaha, Omaha. So, that was very impressive to me about Ollie Gordon.
Yeah. You know what this reminds me a little bit of, Barry? And I know we need to talk about the offensive line. We've kind of alluded to the offensive line here, but we need to talk about that. But this reminds me a little bit of what we saw with Jaylen Warren a couple years ago. Oklahoma State for the first couple games of that year. Who's the running back? Where's the run game? I mean, the offensive line looked like it couldn't block anybody for any yardage. Then they go out to Boise State. Jaylen Warren emerges, and suddenly we realize, holy cow, this offensive line is a run blocking line. They can absolutely clear the way. So I don't know if this was a hand in glove thing where you figure out who your guy is and then the offensive line coalesces around it. I don't know if it's a chicken and egg question. Did the offensive line get better and clear the way for Ollie Gordon, or did Ollie Gordon really, motivate them? I don't know what the answer is. Barry, that offensive line is part of this too. I mean, they lost Jason Brooks at one point in the game on Saturday, and they still kept going. That I didn't think we'd get to the point where we could say they lose a starter mid-game and they still have a guy run for 282. Offensive line is part of this as well.
No doubt about it. Gundy told us that last week. He said the story is the offensive line. We figured out how to get the offensive line to block. He didn't give us any details, but that's very much true. Now, I also don't know that the O-line was creating massive holes at West Virginia. I thought the holes were bigger against Kansas the week before. I think the game plan was very good. Some of the play designs, like I said, the quick hitting right up the middle. They gave Ollie Gordon about this much of a space. He hit it. He's a big, tall, lanky guy. He looks like he could help Mike Boynton on the basketball court. Anyway, there he goes. And so I think it's whatever the O-line needs to do or can do on a given week. I think hats off to Tim Rattay, Casey Dunn, Gundy, Charlie Dickey, the whole offensive staff for really getting things going where they saw West Virginia might be vulnerable. And Ollie Gordon, he sure took advantage of it. He had a monster game through three quarters, 20 for 133. And then the fourth quarter became the stuff of legend.
Yeah.
149 yards on 9 carries, 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's a massive thing. So, yeah, but you're right. Kudos to the O-line, and that has changed. The ability to run the ball has changed the trajectory of this OSU season. A team that looked so bad against Central Arkansas, looked so bad against Arizona State, looked so bad against South Alabama, actually has a pulse for the Big 12 championship game. How do you see this Gordon running game transformation change the trajectory of these Cowboys?
I mean, it can't help but, I think you have to see this team now as, like you said, a legit Big 12 title game contender, in part because they have a schedule that sets up perfectly to be in that conversation. Now their remaining 5 games are against the 4 newcomers to the league, which only have, I think, still 1 win against legacy Big 12 teams. So teams that are definitely beatable out there in those 4, and then Oklahoma, which obviously it'll probably come down if they can beat Oklahoma in Stillwater in a highly, highly charged final Bedlam football game for the foreseeable future. Do they get to Arlington? But I think when you've got a run game that can do what it can do, and it's not that they're running the ball because their pass game is terrible. Their passing game isn't right now what their running game is, but they can do both. And so I think that becomes a big challenge for defenses. So yeah, I mean, it's like bizarro world, Barry, when you think about what we were thinking 3 weeks ago. And, before that K-State game, there was Big 12 title game. I mean, OSU's not going to the Big 12 title game unless they're buying tickets for it. But now there's a great chance for this team to be in Arlington, which would be, it has a lot of shades of 2021. Some struggle early. Unlike, they didn't have 2 losses, but they did have a loss. But I guess not until the Big 12 title game. So, but there are some similarities in the two, getting the run game going, some of those things. So it's definitely interesting to see how this run game evolution and Ollie Gordon's emergence has really changed things for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and and we saw from the Sooners on Saturday, it's not a juggernaut that nobody can stand up to. Central Florida dang near took out Oklahoma. I think that OSU has to have a decent level of confidence that Bedlam is gettable. And if they can beat Cincinnati and win Bedlam, hey, Big 12 championship game is a horse race. It's a land run. And for this team to even be in the conversation for Arlington is remarkable, because you look back a month at what we were talking about and what we thought, and you just I have to salute the coaching staff and the players, because things looked rotten. Things looked meager, and they've really got it. They've got it going. And with the new look Big 12, this 14-team league where everybody's not playing each other, very well could come down to tiebreakers. Who knows? But it's pretty cool that here as we move towards the last Saturday in October, OSU's in the discussion for the championship game. So
yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
I guess the big question is, with this offense now hitting another gear, how does the defense play into all of this? Because they weren't very good. They weren't terrible on Saturday at West Virginia, Barry, but the defense seemed to maybe be taking some strides, and now we've kind of seen some struggles. They gave up a couple long touchdown passes again. I think they've allowed 7 touchdown passes this season, ranging from 30 to 49 yards. That's troublesome. Can they continue to win ball games with a defense that is having some issues, but an offense that is at this level that we're now seeing?
Jacko, 7 touchdown passes from 30 to 49 yards. Not this season. The last 2 weeks.
2 weeks. I said that wrong.
Unbelievable.
Right.
It's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this before. Here's the deal. Let's go back to December. Remember when the Cowboys started hitting the transfer portal, and you think, oh, that's interesting, and then, oh, that's not good. And then, wait, what's going on? There, it's progressions of grief and all that kind of stuff. The one that struck me at the time, I look back now and realize that, I had the right premonition. It was when Jabbar Muhammad left and went to Washington. Yep. They lost some receivers, but receivers fall out of trees. They lost Spencer Sanders, but you sort of knew something was going on there. And they lost Mason Cobb, the linebacker, to USC, and you thought, oh, that's not good. But, Mason's good, but he's probably replaceable. Then they lost Jabbar Muhammad to Washington. And I thought, wait, he's not just good, he's really good.
Yeah.
And this is cornerback. And what we're seeing now is the residue of some of those departures. Thomas Harper to Notre Dame, Jabbar Muhammad to Washington. Gundy and staff are using 4 freshmen in the secondary. McKinney, Epps, Smith, and I can't remember the other one. I get them mixed up. But they're going through growing pains, and they're getting confused at times. They're getting crossed up. They're just getting beat.
Yep.
It's a danger. It's a problem. Good news Saturday is Cincinnati this is not Joe Burrow's Bengals. It's Emory Jones's Bearcats. If you tackle the quarterback, you're going to be fine. He's not going to beat you too much with his arm. But that's the concern is this revamped secondary, bunch of young guys. Hopefully they mature, become really good players, don't transfer to Washington and Notre Dame. But that's what you've got to live with right now. Maybe they're going to improve during the season. Very well, probably not just will, but will.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to live with it for now. They're getting beat deep on some plays they shouldn't be getting beat with.
Yeah, and it sort of reminds me of first year of Jim Knowles. Well, first year and a bit of Jim Knowles. They had some young guys. They were dependent on young guys to do some stuff that they didn't always do correctly. So that tends to happen sometimes. And so I think it could bite them. They could lose, one of these games against the newcomers because they have some issues there. But they've adjusted well, or we've at least seen them make some adjustments, which is heartening. And then, Barry, you got to like the way they're stopping the run. They corralled Kansas, who their run game is dynamic. They corralled them. And then to do that against West Virginia, this looks like a defense that can stop the run. And as you mentioned, Cincinnati, that plays pretty well moving forward against Cincinnati this week.
Yeah, I've gotten to know some of the Bearcat people. Really like them. Glad they're in the conference. I think they're going to be a good addition to the Big 12. But they're struggling. They can't, their offense is not very good. They're not the running team that, say, KU, K-State, Iowa State, West Virginia is. And they don't have the quarterback that can make you pay. We've actually seen this quarterback, OSU fans, if you didn't realize it, Emory Jones was the quarterback for Arizona State a year ago when the Sun Devils came to Stillwater. So he's a runaround guy. He's a little bit like Garrett Green at West Virginia, maybe a little better runner, probably not as good a thrower. Cincinnati's a little thin in the playmaking department. Scott Satterfield, the coach, told me back in April when I went up to Cincinnati, he said, we're pretty good in the lines. Cincinnati's got a stout defense. It's not going to be easy for Ollie Oxenfree to go wild against Cincinnati. But Cincinnati's offensive skill people, not great. This might be a team that'll have trouble getting behind that OSU defense. So Bearcats are 2-5, 0-4 in the Big 12. I don't see much juice on the upset meter. Do you?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think for me, coming out of those two big home wins against Kansas State and Kansas, for Oklahoma State to go on the road to face, there were some tough circumstances there. I think for them to go and prove that those two home wins could travel. This sort of new look Oklahoma State team could take it on the road and win games. That showed me that this is a team that is consistently now in a place where they're able to do this. They're able to go win ball games. And so I think taking that back home, I think that bodes well against Cincinnati. Yeah, I don't have a ton of great sense that this is a trap type of game for Oklahoma State. They clearly know they need to win ball games. I mean, they lost 2 and looked bad doing it. They know they got to win. So I have to think they're not going to feel terribly overconfident going into this game against Cincinnati. I don't know what score you're picking, Barry, but I'm probably looking in the, somewhere around 41, say 41-21. Does that seem crazy?
No, that's close. I think I said 37-20. After I said it, it might be a little high.
A little high for
Cincinnati,
OSU?
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe Cincinnati. Both. But Cincinnati's pretty good on defense. They held the Sooners to 20. They gave up. They lost to Baylor 32-29 the other day, but Baylor had only 2 offensive touchdowns. Cincinnati's decent on defense. This will be a challenge for Gundy and staff, but the way that Ollie Gordon is running, I think they'll get it done. I'll stick with what I said, 37-20, but Cincinnati's going to keep it relatively close. They've kept it close on everybody. I mean, they've not been blown out at all. So,
yeah,
I think we're headed for an interesting game in Stillwater.
Hey, I was thinking about this today. I have seen 4 consecutive weeks of really good ball games. I know fans love when their teams blow people out, But if you like watching competitive games, we have seen some. I wouldn't mind to see another one in Stillwater with OSU and Cincinnati. We'll talk about that and much more next week, but that's all the time we've got this week. So remember, the Cowboys host the Bearcats at 7 p.m. Saturday. ESPN2 is the network. We'll have all sorts of OSU content this week at Sellout Crowd. Barry and I are also at barrytrammell.com and jenny-carlson.com. And if by chance this happens to be your first time hearing or watching us, be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Yes, I said subscribe. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.